This is Brian. He's not just any fish, he's the fish that's completely taken over my fish room. He's taken over how I view this hobby and how I do this hobby, and pretty much my life. What started as a rescue turned into a full-blown adventure. This is the story of how Brian shaped everything. It will be obvious to many of you that Brian is a giant gourami. There are many varieties of gourami, from very small to the very large like Brian. And long-time subscribers may know that I've made no secret that gouramis don't really do anything for me. They're not one of my favourite fish. Yes, some of them are pretty. Brian isn't. Some of them make a fantastic nano planted tank pop. Brian doesn't. So he's not even got the things going for him that the good ones do. But he does have a little bit of something. I was in a phase where I had just built my big tank and I wanted to take on some big fish. And Brian was definitely going to be one of those things. So that's why we ended up taking him on. I knew very little about Brian before I got him. His temperament was described as a gentle giant, really peaceful. And to be fair, he did start out like that. He didn't show any signs of aggression towards his fellow tank mates at first. And did look like the gentle giant. And when you research giant gouramis, like anything on the internet, if you look long enough, you will find the thing you want to see. And I saw people who were successfully keeping them in a community of large monster fish without problem. Of course, I also found people who couldn't keep them with other fish because of aggression problems, but that might be something I'd have to deal with later. Back then, he was smaller, still finding his fins, but already full of personality. I thought I was just giving him a home. Little did I know I had basically adopted the future boss of the fish room and someone that would rearrange my entire life. At first, things went fine. He settled in, he was looking good alongside all the other big fish in there. But when he grew, his attitude grew too. One way to look at this would be to say Brian does not like sharing. And when a giant gourami decides a tank is his, then nobody else gets much of a say in the matter. He will tolerate some tank mates, but only to a certain size, and he doesn't see a much bigger fish as anything of a challenge to him, and will harass and harangue until things go wrong. The only option I had was to separate Brian. The only other tank that I had was big enough was currently a home to my discus. Now, discus and murdery gouramis aren't going to be a good mix, so I kinda had to come up with a plan for Megatank 2. That meant I could get one of my dreams, which was a huge, enormous, fantastic 12-foot discus tank. Freeing up the tank to give Brian a bit of a time out while I thought about something more appropriate to do with him. Now, saying this in a couple of sentences sounds simple, but in reality this was one of the biggest upheavals I've ever done in a fish room, and yeah, it wasn't fun. Of course, it didn't stop there, and that was a temporary measure because Brian keeps growing. And the tank that he was in just isn't going to be big enough. I considered everything. Normally, this is where most people, I think, the sensible thing to do would be to rehome Brian to someone with a more appropriate tank. But that's where this changed the hobby for me. I don't want to make my problem someone else's problem and just keep kicking the can down the road. So, not with a heavy heart, but with a renewed sense of got to do the right thing, I bit the bullet and planned for Megatank 3. Finally, a tank fit for a king. Brian would have his throne, and my God would he know it. This is his kingdom for him to be in charge of. In the end, I opted to buy a tank rather than build, because the dimensions of this tank, which is 7 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet-ish, a little bit more than that, it just made a little bit more financial sense to buy it rather than build it. and it gives him plenty of space to live out the rest of his days. He shares the tank with a few fish which are smaller than him that for now he's fine with, but with all the other tanks I've got in the fish room, I'm left with lots of options should things need to change up in the future. All of these changes, almost my entire fish room, had a ripple effect caused by Brian. I had to rethink everything, the way I did everything. I went from lots of tanks to fewer tanks with more focus. My ultimate goal was to make sure each fish in the fish room gets an appropriate home, the right home, rather than saying, I'll deal with it later. I went from a bit of a chaotic collection of tanks to a fish room I'm proud of now. And the driving force was Brian. Brian didn't just change my fish room, he became part of the channel. He pops up in all my live streams, begs for food when I'm filming, he even gets his own shout outs in the comments. He's basically the mascot of the Aquarium Adventures channel. He sits on my right hand shoulder while I do my day job, while I do my editing for the YouTube channel, while I do everything basically. He's become like my best pal. So I'm glad he has a home fit for a king. So what started as, on the face of it, a simple rescue, turned into some of the biggest projects of my fish keeping life. Every tank move, every reshuffle, every live stream snack request, it's all because of Brian. He's the unlikely hero of this channel. He's demanding, he's bossy, he's hilarious, he's occasionally murdery, but I wouldn't have him any other way. So, thanks Brian. I quite famously don't like gouramis, so for me to make this video dedicated to the biggest gourami, to the biggest headache that's ever been in the fish room, that's brought me to the best point in this hobby, thanks Brian.